Hello, everyone. My name is Arthur, and I have been doing an internship at the USC Music Library this semester. This presentation highlights a day in the life of that internship. My relationship with the USC Music Library started back in 2023, when I had just begun my MLIS program at San Jose State University. I asked Andrew Justice, the music librarian at USC, if I could volunteer at the library, and he said yes. My project that summer was to weed the oversized score collection. On screen, you can see the collection and my work table when I was in the middle of that project. This was a very interesting experience because I ended up touching almost every item in the oversized score collection, so it was a great way to familiarize myself with the scores and to understand the reasons that certain things should stay and others should go. When I started my internship this semester in fall 2025, I began another weeding project, this time in the music literature section of the library instead of the oversized score section. You can see some empty shelves on the left and a cart full of the books pulled off the shelves on the right. These books are pulled according to circulation data and then evaluated by Andrew to see if they return to the shelves or need to be discarded. So I've been weeding histories, bibliographies, and discographies in order to make more room on the shelves. One of my main activities at the music library is to observe Andrew teaching. Most Mondays, he teaches Music Research Materials and Techniques, which is a semester-long course required of all graduate music students at USC. The class meets in the haircloths room, which is the room you see through that door in the distance. Here is the inside of the haircloths room. As you can see, it's a nice room with some natural light, a large table in the center, and armchairs along the back wall. I get to the music library about 10 a.m. on Mondays and usually work on something in this room until class begins at noon. I touch base with Andrew every Monday morning, and we discuss the class and other ongoing projects. The class itself is wonderful. I have really learned a lot from attending it and speaking with Andrew about it. I'll provide an overview of what the class covers. On the first day, Andrew gave the class an orientation to the music library, which included a library tour. Here in the photo on the left, he's showing the students the music library's CD collection. Throughout the semester, the class has focused on different topics such as dictionaries, encyclopedias, and thematic catalogs, manuscripts and printed editions, and periodicals and other publications. On the left is an image of a metal plate used for engraving and printing music from a short YouTube video that the class watched. The video was made in 1936. And on the right is the haircloths room after a scavenger hunt for dictionaries, encyclopedias, and thematic catalogs, where the students hunted in the library for a reference book relevant to their topic and then discussed how useful it was and in what ways it was and wasn't useful. One of my favorite class periods was the visit to the USC's special collections. In the morning, I helped Andrew set up the Leon and Marta Feuchtwanger room. That's the Feuchtwanger room on the left with a cart of materials that Andrew paged from special collections. And on the right is the manuscript fair copy of Stravinsky's Rake's Progress. As you can see, it says, "This is my original manuscript," and it's signed by Igor Stravinsky along with the date and location of completion, April 7th, 1951, in Hollywood. Andrew set up the Feuchtwanger room with a wide variety of music materials from special collections. Here on the left is a box of Edison wax cylinders from the late 19th century, early 20th century. They would need to be played on a phonograph, which special collections cannot accommodate. However, We spoke in class about the UC Santa Barbara Cylinder Audio Archive, which has freely available digitizations of many of these cylinders. And on the right, you can see some flyers from the Sarah Sutler Cohen collection of punk and heavy metal music flyers, primarily from the Bay Area and the Los Angeles area in the 1980s and 1990s. The week after we visited the special collections, Andrew devoted the whole class period to the history of sound recordings. So we went through the timeline from phonautograph to phonograph to gramophone to vinyl discs and magnetic tape to CDs and finally to digital files like MP3s. I have to say that I find this subject matter really interesting, and Andrew also shared with me the syllabus for a semester-long course he taught just on the history of sound recordings. Observing this research materials and techniques class has been one of the real highlights of my internship because it's showed me the value of spending a full semester learning how to do music research in the music library. I'm simultaneously in an information literacy class at San Jose State, and so I've been thinking a lot about the 6 threshold concepts that comprise the ACRL's framework for information literacy in higher education. And I'm struck by how the concepts come into play in the music research course. For example, the history of sound recordings is all about information creation as a process, with each format's capabilities and constraints, and the value that each format had in its time and still has for researchers nowadays. Right now in the class, we are in the midst of watching students present on the topics of their final research papers. And that's also extremely interesting to hear about the topics that these students genuinely care about and have researched over the course of the semester. Apart from the music research class, I have also worked on a number of other projects. For example, I created a research guide or LibGuide for the composer Karlheinz Stockhausen. Back in 2023, when I weeded the oversized score collection, I noticed that very few, virtually none, of Stockhausen's lavishly produced oversized scores had circulated in the library in a long time. So I pulled them all off the shelves. But they were not deselected because Stockhausen is too important. So because I'm interested in Stockhausen, that got me thinking about why, year after year, no one was checking his scores out from the library and why the library should keep them if no one was using them. I decided to make a research guide that showed how you would start to research Stockhausen, and by extension, any musician or topic that you might be interested in. And Andrew has said that he may publish my research guide on the USC website. If that happens, I hope it helps students discover the wonderful physical Stockhausen scores that USC has in its collection. Another project I've been working on is to assess a box full of piano rolls that was donated to the library. There are about 80 or so rolls, and it's not totally clear at first blush whether they should be discarded or brought in as a special collection. The piano rolls are sound recordings of someone playing the piano, so the main question is, are these recordings rare or widely available? I've been looking up the recordings on WorldCat, the manufacturer's catalog, and YouTube to see what I can find. This spreadsheet shows the metadata that I've been compiling on the piano rolls. In many cases, there are recordings on YouTube of the rolls being played on player pianos. In some cases, you can still buy the rolls from the manufacturer's website. But in some cases, details about the piano rolls are harder to find, so the music library may end up keeping the rarer items. This is another spreadsheet that I made in response to a reference question. The library received an inquiry from a Richard Hagemann expert about whether there were any manuscript scores in a collection of songs from special collections, which was gifted to USC by the composer. In order to answer this question, I examined the contents of the box and produced a spreadsheet of metadata, which was then used to update the finding aid. It turned out that none of the contents of the box were actually manuscript items, but now it should be easier for anyone to discover online what the box contains. So that has been my semester so far, which is now wrapping up, and I hope this short presentation has painted a picture of the work I've been doing and all that I've been learning. Sometimes you hear people say that their internship was a valuable experience because it showed them that they were not the right fit for a certain type of work. Quite the contrary in my case. I feel so privileged to get to work at the USC Music Library for a full semester, and I look forward to Mondays because I love being in the library. I feel very engaged with the class material and the special projects that I'm working on. I think it would be a dream come true to work at the USC Music Library. Thanks very much for listening. Take care.